Welcome to the Stranger Conversations podcast, where we explore the lives and lessons of those around us, hidden in plain sight. I'm your host, Tay Jones. Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Stranger Conversations podcast. Today I'm speaking with Rob Landis, a transgender male who educates people on the topic. Rob was gracious enough to provide information related to his journey and the steps he's taken throughout his transition. He also allowed me to ask several questions to help clarify certain issues. The purpose of this podcast is to provide a platform for people to talk about whatever they want and to learn about unique individuals. Everyone has a story to tell, and Rob is no exception. Whether you agree with the topic we're going to discuss today, I guarantee you're going to learn something about the ever-so-present issue. Now let's get on with the conversation.
Hello.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? It's Tay Jones with the Stranger Conversations podcast.
Yes. Good. How are you?
Doing good. Yeah. I appreciate you signing up for the show, and we are up and recording on your episode.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Rob, when people sign up for the show, there is a little bit of a portion in there that says, tell me, if there's anything that you want us to know before we start recording. And you would put in some very interesting things, very interesting subject matter that I'm really excited to talk with you about.
Great.
And so I think what we should do is first start out, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move into the topic that you're hoping to speak about.
Okay. Perfect. Well, I am Rob Landis. I was born Robin Marie, and I was born in a small rural town called Prineville, Oregon. The current population is about 9,000, but back when I was born, it was probably a bit less than that. I am 38 years old, and I transitioned from female to male 9 years ago.
Wow.
March was actually what I like to call my maniversary.
Maniversary. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so since then, since this is a rural area in Central Oregon, not many doctors were familiar with kind of, all the issues that come along with transgender individuals in this area. They didn't know how to best offer services for trans individuals. So
Yeah.
I took it upon myself to just kind of be out about who I am, and really just kind of help the doctors learn as I was learning about myself and the needs that I have as a trans individual here in such a small area.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I was born to kind of a religious family, and so that was rough. But I do have a loving mother who adores me, and she loves me unconditionally. So once I came out as trans, she and most people that know me said, "Well, it kind of makes sense. It seems to fit." So
Yeah.
they're
Interesting.
just glad that I'm happy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, if they had those thoughts that maybe that this seemed to fit, at what point in your life did you start to think that maybe you were a transgender person?
Well, ever since I was little and could basically talk, I didn't want to wear dresses.
Yeah.
I voiced my opinions to my moms about, not wanting to wear a dress, or like for my birthdays or holidays, I would ask for toys that are traditionally manufactured around specific genders, like boy toys,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote,
G.I. Joes and things like that.
Yeah. So growing up, most people just called me a tomboy, or there was even a long period where people were mistaking me for a little boy anyway.
Okay.
I have 2 older sisters, and so they would have friends that ask them what their brother's name was, and they're like, "I don't have a brother."
Yeah.
So But at the time when I was younger, there wasn't a terminology for transgender. I didn't know that it was something that I could do something about.
Mm-hmm.
So, the only thing that I had heard when I was a kid was transvestite, and it was always kind of taboo. And whenever somebody mentioned the word transvestite, it always had a negative connotation.
Right.
And like I said, it is a small rural town, so there wasn't much diversity in Central Oregon at the time either.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I'm familiar with Prineville, and it is kind of a smaller town. Kind of that rural. I mean, like a cowboy town.
Yeah.
How does that work for you? Have you faced a lot of backlash, or have the times that are changing in the world today, also been out there for a while to where this hasn't been an issue?
Well, I think it's situational. I I have done a lot of things in this community where the people that do know me absolutely love me.
Mm-hmm.
They support whatever, as long as I'm happy, they know that I'm the same lovable, goofy person that they knew before. When I was in high school, I was a homecoming princess. I was the student body president of Crook County High School my senior year. And so, like, from there, I make personal connections basically wherever I go. And since being out about being transgender, I think it helps show people that I'm not, a freak. I'm not
Right.
completely different. I still function like a normal person. I sleep, I wake up, I use the restroom, I eat, the same normal life stuff that everybody else does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and forgive me too. I would consider myself very ignorant about this topic, which is why I'm actually really excited to talk with you and ask some questions. So I hope, like you said, even in your thing, you said you're very out about this and you love to educate people. So hopefully I can ask some pointed questions and get some answers from you.
Sure.
Yeah. So you were a woman transitioned to a male. Do you think that is looked differently than a male transitioning to a woman?
Yes, I do. Unfortunately, society still has their ways of looking at things, and I don't think they're most people's minds have not been opened to the concept of it going both ways.
Yeah.
So, um, there's always that talk of male privilege,
Mm-hmm.
and why would any man want to, get rid of his privilege and become a woman? Also, a lot of people don't realize, but testosterone is a very strong hormone, and for trans women, if they have went through their first puberty, the testosterone effects that it has taken on their body are much more challenging to kind of fight off if someone is transitioning from a male to a female.
Mm-hmm.
It is considerably easier for somebody to transition from female to male because that testosterone is so strong. It hits your body right away. A lot of changes happen within a short period of time, and like for me, within my first year on testosterone, my facial hair was coming in, my voice was deepening, all kinds of changes like that are physical that everyone else in public can see.
Yeah.
Uh, so you can essentially, and I don't like the term pass because I'm not trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes or anything, but where society starts seeing you as the gender that you identify as,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot easier most of the time for trans men versus trans females. So I do feel like, in a way, that made the process a little more easier for me. But it's never easy, even though I do feel like I've had it pretty easy. Um, the psychological challenges that you have to go through, the physical challenges, it's all just a big ball of crazy, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say it's much more challenging for a trans woman to have to kind of try to undo some of the effects of the testosterone that it had done with their body before transition.
Yeah. So you took testosterone. That's part of the process.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I started taking that 9 years ago this March, and yeah, I take injections in my thighs every 2 weeks just to kind of keep that level of testosterone in my body.
So it's
And
an
I go,
ongoing thing you do.
yeah, absolutely. And I go to an endocrinologist every 6 months. I get blood work done so they can monitor, make sure that my liver is still healthy, and check my blood cells and all that stuff because testosterone does take a toll if it's too much or too little in your body. So they just want to monitor that stuff as I continue to take it.
Yeah. And and what other sort of changes have you gone through any surgeries, things like that?
I have, yeah. I had top surgery after about a year and a half of transition, and so, like I mentioned, the psychological challenges that I've had. Once I started taking testosterone, not being able to afford or have access to the top surgery for 3.5 years afterward,
Mm-hmm.
basically living as a man with breasts was very challenging. It was a pretty depressing time for me, but I finally was able to get that done, and I, did my research and figured out which surgeon that specializes in that I wanted to go to, and ended up going to Florida. And
Well,
then a couple years after that, I was able to have a hysterectomy because I did not want to have any biological children of my own. I had no use for my uh, ovaries or
mm-hmm.
uterus. So I was like, yeah, take that out.
Wow.
And yeah, and since then, I mean, I haven't had any other lower surgery. I'm pretty comfortable with my life and how I function now. Um, there's obviously great cost to such a surgery, and it would
Yeah.
be a lot of time off of work. And I think, at least in my life right now, it's just not something that's fathomable.
Yeah. And you had mentioned too that it's harder for someone to get off. So say you're a woman taking testosterone, it's hard to get that out. If you decide to change back, is that a common thing where people start to transition and then maybe decide it was the wrong choice and go back the other way?
Yeah, I have heard of some people that found themselves in that situation, and it could be again situational. It depends on if the challenges physically that they experienced while transitioning was too difficult, if their family or friends just wasn't supportive and they decided that it wasn't worth it to them to go through all of that. And some people end up with some physical changes that they weren't prepared for. There's all kinds of different things. And when I was transitioning, I did have to go to a therapist first.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, there were basically laws that said a mental health therapist had to kind of approve and make sure that you were of sound mind to make such a huge life altering decision.
Yeah. You say
And
that's
I,
not the case now?
yeah, and I do think it might be state to state. They might
Gotcha.
have different regulations for that, but I do believe right now it's not the case.
Yeah. And if some of it too, you hear a lot of talk about, very young people making this decision and their parents are getting them surgeries and putting them on medication. Do you think that there should be any sort of age cutoff for this to to make sure that the person really does understand, if they're maybe too young or potentially too young to know exactly what they might want for the rest of their life?
Well, yes and no. Like I said, when I was about 5, I felt like I was a boy, but I didn't quite have the knowledge to articulate that.
Yeah.
So I do feel like, straight kids know that they're straight just automatically, or it might take a little bit of, I don't know, about puberty age to realize kind of what you're interested in and what you're not interested in.
Right.
For some people, it takes even longer. I know a trans woman who didn't really get to transition until she was almost in her 70s.
Wow.
She had a wife and kids, and then it was just like, this is not me. I've been living a lie my whole life, and um, so there's not really one age bracket where you can say, this is the cutoff or this is when it starts. But I do feel like kids that are young, pretty young, still kind of know.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also, kind of rules right now where you can't just start a young kid on testosterone. There are hormone blockers, which so far have been proven to not really have any long term side effects.
Okay.
If a child decides they, in fact, don't want to transition, they can stop taking the hormone blockers and they will resume their normal puberty. Their body will start producing the normal hormones that they were born with. And,
Hmm.
there's no long lasting effect.
Yeah.
Uh, and there is an age restriction on when different hormones can be introduced. And at that time, I do feel like the kids are old enough to know whether that's something they want or not.
Yeah. And this topic is very interesting. And like you said, uh, you kind of understand. You start to go through puberty, and you kind of understand what you're interested in. So, what exactly is the difference between sexual orientation as opposed to gender orientation, and whether or not you're male and female? How does that play together?
Sure. Well, sexual orientation, you know, um, the difference between the two is who you're attracted to
Mm-hmm.
and how you feel personally as yourself. So, like for me, being born female, but I felt like I was a boy, that had nothing to do with who I was attracted to. It
Okay.
had to do with myself, how I felt about myself, how I'm perceived by the general public, by complete strangers that I meet, how I am seen walking through this life. I felt like a boy. But when you have those physical aspects like breasts and
Right.
hips, it's very obvious to somebody, even if you don't speak to them. They see you walking toward them and they're like, oh, that is like a butch lesbian or something.
Yeah.
That girl has short hair and boobs. So they make those accusations without talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I felt like a boy, but there's no way for somebody to tell who I'm sexually attracted to
Right.
just by that. So that's kind of the difference between the two is who you're attracted to versus the gender that you feel.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, with you being a male, are you attracted to females or males? I guess I'm just curious about the sexual orientation that you go by.
Right. Well, I have always been attracted to women,
Okay.
um, and that hasn't changed. I know lots and lots of trans individuals who did after transitioning kind of change their perspective and they became attracted to a different gender than they were attracted to before. So
Hmm.
that is something that is definitely possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So you had always been attracted to women even before you became Rob.
Yes, so technically I was labeled as a lesbian
Yeah.
before I was labeled as trans.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting. And I wanted to hit something real quick because I jotted it down. You were talking about how important it is for people to still love you, and you have a loving mother. You didn't mention your father in that. How did your father take it?
Well, my parents were divorced at a very young age, though my father is supportive as well. I just don't see him or talk to him as much.
Gotcha.
He lives in a different state, but he actually is supportive as well. He refers to me with the proper pronouns. And I think he always wanted a boy. So in this aspect, he kind of lucked out. It just
Yeah.
took it took longer. I think I was 29 when I transitioned, so it took almost 30 years for him to get a boy, but he got
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. And then How about, just other aspects in life? Were there any family members that were, vehemently against this and that you've lost contact with, or any friends? Have you lost anything because of the choice that you made?
Surprisingly, no. Like I said, I've had it really easy. Even my grandma on my dad's side, she was one of the first ones to start trying really hard to use the proper pronouns.
Mm,
And she's like 70 now or something like that. So
yeah.
I feel like that was pretty amazing for somebody of that generation to at least kind of understand it enough to respect me and try to use the right pronouns.
Right.
I didn't have any friends in my circle that would have judged me for that. I started in my younger 20s, I really just started to make my friend circle only positive, uplifting people.
Hmm.
I tried to get rid of all of the negativity in my life, and it was really refreshing. And uh, I mean, yeah, I've had it pretty easy.
Yeah. I think we could all use a little bit more positivity and shut out the negative for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's another thing I like to point out though is that a lot of trans individuals don't have that support. Um,
Right.
even if their family is, they might have friends that just can't wrap their minds around it, can't support it, and that type of stuff can lead to severe depression and possible suicide.
Hmm.
It's very hard when you feel like the ones that you love and that you thought loved you won't tolerate you living your life as your true self.
Yeah. And how about you? Did you have any struggles with depression, or what, or if you did it get better as you became who you felt that you should be?
I did in high school, so when I was still female,
Hmm.
and I wasn't dating anybody. I was in sports and doing other stuff, but I definitely felt like there was something wrong with me. I wasn't normal, and at the time being labeled kind of more of a lesbian, I was just like, it's not that. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is, but yeah, there's something different about me. But I didn't feel like I wanted to be different. But it was kind of out of my control at that time. I didn't know that transitioning was something I could do, so I couldn't really put a pin on it. But I definitely was depressed because I wasn't like all the other girls my age. I didn't have boyfriends, and at the time I didn't even have girlfriends. I didn't date anybody all through school.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, but all of that is, or at least most of it, as you transitioned and now that you are, the male, a lot of those issues have kind of gone away. You felt a little bit more who you should be, et cetera, and a lot less depression on that. No more
Yeah,
confusion.
absolutely. Yeah, I as soon as I had realized it was something I could do, I just kind of hit the ground running, doing my research, finding somebody locally in this small area that would be able to prescribe me testosterone. And after that first shot, I mean, I was kind of cocky beforehand, but once all of my changes started to happen, and some of the things didn't happen as fast as I wanted, like body fat redistribution. Um, but I still got cockier and cockier, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was missing this my whole life.
Yeah. So, do you say that didn't happen as quick, like body fat? Uh, is that something that changes too? Like kind of
Oh
where
yeah,
the way that men and women store fat in different areas. That so that actually changes once you go through the transition and you're on testosterone.
yes it does, and muscle mass.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I was starting to feel the muscle mass changes, but the first couple years on hormones, at least for me, I will say that it is different for everybody depending on their genetics. But for me, I was feeling the muscle growth, but my mother blessed me with what I like to call birthing hips. And so I have really big hips, and I had kind of a chubby stomach and a big rear end, which
Yeah.
my sister was always jealous of, by the way. But it took a while of me working out and watching what I was eating for that stuff to actually take more action into going away.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. And how do you feel about it, or in general? What are the normal thoughts of transgender people competing in sports, and men who transition into a woman competing in women's sports? Have you dealt with any of that information in some of your talks? And what's the best way to describe that, or answer some of those questions?
Well, I feel like there's been trans athletes in sports before this all became an issue, and you didn't hear about all these trans individuals winning first place all the time.
Yeah.
You didn't even know they were trans. So there are a couple trans athletes that I know and follow on Instagram and have read about in lots of different magazines. Some are sponsored by Nike, and which I think is awesome that they're showing their support of trans athletes. But yeah, like I said, they're not dominating the sports. They're not winning first place, and that's causing an uproar. It's that people don't understand and haven't educated themselves
Yeah.
on how these things affect. Because, like I said, trans women, though they may have been born men, once they start taking the female hormones,
Mm-hmm.
they're not having that muscle mass, they're not having that bulk. Their bodies are changing as well.
Yeah.
And so, um, in that aspect, most athletes in most sports, if that is what their career is, they train and they train and they train, and that's all they do. Hours a day
Yeah.
training.
Absolutely.
Now, that, I mean, obviously, like in high school, most kids in sports are not going to be training to that level, as opposed to like the Olympics or something. But everybody's going to be training hard if they're in that specific sport. And like I said, with the hormones of the gender that they're identifying as, their bodies are going to be functioning totally different. It's not going to be, like a man's body in a dress.
Right. Yeah. You Are you in a relationship now?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you had mentioned you had, a hysterectomy, right? And you had the
Hmm.
parts removed. I don't really understand exactly how the rest of that works. Is there another step that someone could take and actually, have, like, I mean, some sort of a penis attached to them? I don't know. I don't understand all the processes or different levels of surgeries that people can go through.
Yes. Well, at least to my understanding, right now, there's still not a way for a trans man to have a functioning penis with semen. So there's
Mm-hmm.
no way for them to impregnate somebody.
Yeah.
But there is a way. They typically take a skin graft from either the forearm or the thigh and fashion it into a penis.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's actually multiple different surgeries, but as far as having an actual penis, it can be from your own skin.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they have to reroute the urethra and have a lengthening of the urethra. And then there's another surgery where they can actually reroute the urethra through what was previously the clitoris, which after hormones there is some substantial growth in that area. So it would be kind of like a micro penis, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
So they could still pee standing up, but they don't necessarily feel like it has to be a full size, big penis.
Right.
So it just depends on the individual um, with what they choose
Yeah.
to do. But it is possible, absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah. Like you said, I can't imagine those are very cheap.
Yeah, and it's multi surgeries to make it the end effect.
Yeah. Probably, and which would take, I'm assuming, probably even years to complete.
Right.
Yeah. And so you had mentioned when you signed up too that you were part of a nonprofit. LGBTQ nonprofit in Prineville, which has the best name I think ever. Prideville is what you called it.
Yeah, Prideville.
Yeah, that's a great name for it. Tell us a little bit about what you do with that. What does that organization do?
Well, my friend who shares the same first name, Robin, came up with the idea. She's a local therapist who works at the Prineville Counseling Center. And she was just thinking, for a rural town like Prineville, it doesn't feel like a safe place where maybe LGBTQ kids want to be out, but
Mm-hmm.
they also probably don't want to feel alone. So it's something that Robin came up with as kind of an outlet for the local LGBTQ youth
Mm-hmm.
to, whether it be on little meetups. Of course, all this happened before COVID,
Right.
but a way for them to know that they're not the only ones in this small town that are like them. Plus, during Pride Month, which is June, they do some get-togethers. They have like a gay movie night at a local bar here in town that
Mm-hmm.
is open to uh, people that are under 21, and they have a little movie theater in the back.
Huh.
So they do gay movie nights there and gay bingo and all kinds of stuff where local LGBTQ kids can get together and hang out with people that are like-minded. And yeah, and it's usually in a safe space. Obviously, in public would be, they don't have to be out about who they are, but they can just be in this group of kids that are hanging out.
Yeah. And is this your full time work that you do?
No, no, it's just something where I kind of pitch in however I can.
Yeah.
Um, I I don't I wouldn't say that I work for them. I was just Robin sometimes bounces ideas off of me, or we've
Gotcha.
talked about pulling these events together. We recently had Transgender Day of Visibility, and we met in a park in town, social distancing and wearing masks, but we had, trans flag, and we had some candles to light and just kind of talk about what we want to see for our community
Mm-hmm.
as far as acceptance and different things that we could do. We did a little bit of Pride Month planning ideas, stuff like that.
Yeah. And in a town, of 9,000 people, is this, there's enough people that are, coming to these things to keep it going?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
surprisingly more than you would think. And
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that most people don't realize is that you you probably know at least one or two and might even be related to somebody who identifies as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or
Yeah.
queer.
Yeah. And then speaking of that, the LGBTQ in the what exactly what's considered queer as opposed to gay? What exactly is that? I've noticed that, and I've never had anybody explain that to me.
Well, there's some people that feel like they're somewhere else along the spectrum. The general public just kind of looks at gender as kind of a binary. Either you're male or female,
Mm-hmm.
not a percentage of both, not, like 75% male, but maybe there's that other 25% that's a little feminine.
Yeah.
There's some queer individuals that either feel somewhere in the middle or don't feel like either.
Okay.
They might just feel individually themselves and not really care about the male or the female side.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And then LGBTQ plus. What is plus? Is that just all encompassing kind of everything else?
It is. It's kind of all encompassing. There's people that are asexual. They might not be attracted to anybody
Mm-hmm.
sexually. There's intersex individuals who may not identify with transgender, but they may have been born with um, sex organs that kind of go against their outward physical appearance, and
Gotcha.
or yeah, I mean, there's a myriad of different little things that people don't realize, and that they may still be somebody who wants to at least identify as some part of a group and be
Right.
included. So the LGBTQ plus is just more inclusive of different individuals, and just letting them know that they are a person as well,
Yeah.
you know.
You had also mentioned, you get the bingo nights, etc. So I did some bingo one time, and the person, I don't know what you call them, the facilitator, the caller, or whatever, it was a drag queen, so it was a male dressed as a woman, and
Oh
it
yeah.
was so much fun. But what's the difference between a drag queen and a transgender person? Is it just a part time act as opposed to someone who lives that way all the time?
Yeah, well, I think, and I can't speak for them because I'm not one,
Yeah.
but from what I understand, it is something they're comfortable with doing. They're comfortable cross-dressing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to do any body-altering surgeries
Mm-hmm.
or take different hormones. They're completely happy with their body the way it is, and then
Yeah.
when they perform, they, tuck or uh, put on a bustier or whatever they have
Mm-hmm.
to do that job. And I do think that the adrenaline and the fun of performing for a crowd is probably somewhat addicting and fun.
Right.
Um, so yeah, there's people love drag queens.
Yeah.
I know I do. I know some personally, and they're just always a kick in the pants.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, what do you do in your day to day life and work? Like, what's your profession?
Well, I currently work in a warehouse for a distributor of medical supplies.
Oh, okay.
And I actually have a second job working for a funeral home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is usually one of those conversations where people don't want to know more.
Oh, I definitely want to know more about that. So, which function do you do at the funeral home?
I get called to remove bodies from their place of death and take
Okay.
them to the funeral home.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a pretty important job, especially when people have, they've been going through loss and then, the funeral home comes to take the body away. I've been there for those things, and they always seem like, they do it very respectfully and work with the families. It's not an easy job for sure.
Right. Yeah, and it's not one that most people want to volunteer for either.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said the topic is kind of one of those where people don't really want to know more, because most people are like, "Oh, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
That's just crazy."
So you pick up, the bodies. Do you have any part of the preparation, etc., for the funerals?
I don't do any of the embalming or anything like that. No,
Yeah.
we usually take them back to the funeral home, and there's a process of prepping them before the embalming.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. How did you get into that line of work?
well, this is a small town, and when I was needing a quick little second job, my mom put the word out there on her Facebook page,
Nice.
and one of her Facebook friends, a longtime family friend,
Mm-hmm.
was first to respond. And she said, "Hey, we need some help at the funeral home. Have him give me a call."
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
So,
Mom's looking out
yeah,
for you.
yeah, she is.
And how does that work in a small town? I can only imagine. You probably know a lot of these people, or at least it's, parents, grandparents of people that you may have grown up with, and you run into these folks. Is that happen quite a bit?
So far, there has only been one person that I have known personally.
Yeah.
So that hasn't hit too close to home, as they say. But
Yeah.
but I expect that almost every time I get a call that it could be somebody that I know grieving for one of their loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah. That could be hard for sure. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
have any interest in doing any more of that type of work, but actually being a part of the embalming and everything?
No, not really.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
wouldn't. That's
it,
for
it
sure.
takes that definitely takes a special kind of individual. But yeah, I don't think that that would be something I could do
Yeah.
long term or even short term.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be an interesting job that I definitely would not want to be a part of.
Yeah. Yep, but it is a very important job.
Yeah, for sure.
So I do love that there are people out there that can do it.
Yeah. And then through your jobs, do you have like health coverage? And then I'm also curious, like, are some of these surgeries that you've had, is that covered by insurance?
Actually, yeah, my hysterectomy was covered because I did have to go through a few hoops for my gynecologist to say that it was necessity, uh, surgical
Yeah, so they don't just
necessity
say it's,
to get it
oh,
taken
it's,
care of.
you know, I forget what the term is.
Cosmetic.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
cosmetic or,
wasn't a cosmetic surgery. I actually had ovaries that were not reacting the way they were supposed to.
yeah,
So, I mean, obviously, with a man, you shouldn't even have ovaries. So that should have taken care of that reasoning
right.
right from the get go. But even as a female individual, my organs were not doing what they should.
Hmm.
So it came time to just get them removed and be gone with those issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. At
The
least
top
thanks for
surgery,
that.
I yeah, the top surgery I did have to pay for out of pocket myself.
Hmm.
Um, but that was also I've been through a few jobs in the last 9 years, so insurances are always changing, and whether something is covered or not, there's always hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
Um, so it was just easier for me to pay for it out of pocket. I was able to be approved for a care credit card to pay for it up front and then just make payments to the
Gotcha.
credit card to get
Yeah.
it paid off. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And Rob, with all your surgeries and the testosterone you take, do you do you feel that people look when they look at you? Do you think that they see you as a man, and would they know unless you told them?
they would not know I'm trans unless I told them. Yeah,
Really?
I definitely I have a big beard going on, got a mustache.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
and actually, within the last 2 years, my hairline started to thin and recede. So I've been bald for 2 years.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
so I don't think anybody would look at me and think
Yeah.
that is a girl.
So you can full on grow facial hair just just like anybody else.
Yeah, I have to shave every few days
Yeah.
and trim my beard. I've been in a couple beard competitions. So
Really?
I
That's
have,
great.
yeah, I have red hair. So I dress up as a leprechaun for a couple of the competitions because it grows nice and red.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. That medicine sure does its job, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
But it is, like I said, genetics play a big role in it. I know some people that were born male and identify as male can't grow a beard if they wanted to, or it's patchy,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. I
this or that.
I know people
So
like that myself. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it happens. It just depends on the cards that you're dealt, I guess.
Yeah. And you had mentioned when you signed up about you had a YouTube channel where you documented some of your transitions. Is that something that's still active, or was it? Did you stop that after a couple years after the major changes?
Oh no, it's still active.
Yeah,
I did an update video about a month ago.
really.
So
And
I
what's your
started,
channel?
well, gosh, I don't have the whole link memorized, but if you search Rob Landis FTM for female to male,
Okay.
it should show up a channel
All right. I'm gonna
to
find it too, and
subscribe to.
yeah, I'll find it and
Yeah,
I'll put it in the show notes of this.
great. Thank you. Yeah, I started doing that because before I started transitioning, I was doing a lot of research on YouTube. And I was thankful for trans individuals that transitioned before me, documenting the changes they went through, mentioning some of the things that I might expect to happen if I were to transition.
Right.
And so it was a lot of information that I found helpful, and I wanted to kind of offer my changes and what I went through so other people can kind of do some of their research if they were in the same position as I was. But also, I started doing some when I was dating one of my ex-girlfriends. I started doing kind of a Q&A. I did some videos that were answering questions that I get asked a lot when I do panels at the colleges and stuff. I just thought it would be easier for people even if they're not trans and researching, if there's just people who want to know more about trans individuals without asking them awkward questions in person. They might be
Right.
able to find out some answers to their questions without having to make somebody else feel uncomfortable. They can
Right.
do it from the comfort of their own home behind their computer screen.
Yep. Yeah, well, that's good too. I mean, if somebody can't make the talk, I mean, you have that evergreen content on the internet to provide to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do discussions at colleges and things like that?
Yeah. Yeah. I've went to some medical conferences and just all different things around Central Oregon in Bend. Some businesses who wanted to know more about how to support trans employees that they have, trans customers that they might come across, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And is your YouTube channel, is that kind of the main place that if someone was to learn more about you, is that where you go, or are you really active on Instagram, etc.?
I'm pretty active on Instagram, but I'm just posting pictures of myself or my girlfriend
Yeah.
or the bulldog or, scenery,
Yeah.
hikes that we went on, just kind of, my personal life
Yeah.
in pictures. But yeah, I guess that's more active information of what I'm currently up to.
Hmm.
My update videos on YouTube started off pretty heavy in the first year, like just about every month. I was updating on the changes that I experienced. And then as changes started to kind of taper off, I was doing less update videos
Hmm.
because I felt like it was getting kind of redundant and old. So, I I don't do them every month now. Though some trans individuals do have lots of followers that do that for a living.
Hmm.
I was just kind of putting it out there as small little updates on my transition
Yeah.
and how my life is going now as a trans man. So I don't do them as often, so the YouTube channel won't show kind of current events
Hmm.
unless it's the most current video I've
Right.
done.
Yeah. And then what other sort of resources would you send people to that were looking for more, information, whether just about being transgender or, maybe they're looking forward to changing it. So obviously your YouTube channel, but is there other like online resources that you found helpful?
I really would just like Google the area that I was in. At the time, it was Bend, Oregon, because that's the biggest big city,
Yeah.
which isn't even a big city compared to, like Portland, Oregon, or something. But
Right.
I also didn't want to have to go very far. I didn't want to have to travel 3 hours to see a doctor. So
Hmm.
I just Googled Bend, Oregon endocrinologist, and I was able to go to different websites for um, Bend Memorial Clinic and the different doctors' offices around Bend, and they typically have pictures of their doctors, and it lists what they specialize in. So I was able to find an endocrinologist that specialized in testosterone
Yeah.
because some of them deal with other hormones, or if somebody's diabetic, endocrinologists specialize in diabetes and stuff like that. So I wanted to find one that had lots of years experience with testosterone, even if they didn't have experience with trans individuals. They still kind of know what the normal levels should be
Right.
for a man of my age.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting topic. And I really appreciate you signing up for the show. It's great to talk with you. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to share?
No, I didn't really have anything. I don't need to promote myself any more than I already have, but I basically have your sister to thank for pushing me to do this interview. She's like, I just think you have a great story to tell, so you should
Yeah.
definitely get a hold of my brother. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
that's great. Yeah, and that's kind of how we got connected was just through my sister. But she hadn't told me anything about you, just that my friend Rob. And then when you posted the stuff on the online calendar when you signed up, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. No wonder she suggested you for the show.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved working with your sister. I used to work at a car dealership, and
Okay.
she and I worked some big events together, and so she's a kick in the pants.
Well, she is that for sure. Yeah. All right, Rob. Well, it was great talking to you. Thanks a lot for all the information. And like I said, I'll find your YouTube and I'll put some of that stuff in the show notes, so it'll all be there when the episode's released.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day.
And I will
Oh yeah, go
definitely
ahead.
promote. I will definitely promote your page on your YouTube channel and share it as soon as it's released and whatnot.
That's great.
So you can
Yeah.
get some more followers and people listening in.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
You too. Have a good rest of your weekend.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.
I'd like to thank Rob for coming on the Stranger Conversations podcast. I appreciate his willingness to share such intimate details about his personal life and to help educate people on this topic. If you'd like to learn more about Rob or would like to follow him and what he's got going on, I've put a link to his YouTube channel in the show notes. If you like this episode of the podcast, give us a rating and leave a review so we can continue to share the lives and lessons of those around us, hidden in plain sight. And as always, like, follow, share, and subscribe to the show and our social media so you don't miss out on the conversation. Thanks for listening and stay tuned.